Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our interview with an ARRA favourite and award-winning author, Keri Arthur, as part of a romantic rendezvous locked down. Today, I'll be talking with Keri about world building, her latest series and upcoming release, and what else is coming up for her. We also have some great reader questions in the mix tonight. So, about Keri. Keri is the author of New York Times bestselling Riley Jenson Guardian series, has written now more than 48 novels. She's won a Romance Writers of Australia Ruby Award for speculative fiction and 2 Australian Romance Writers Awards for sci-fi, fantasy or futuristic romance. She was also given a Romantic Times Career Achievement Award for urban fantasy. And Keri is something of a wannabe photographer, so when she's not at her computer writing the next book for us, she can be found somewhere in the Australian countryside taking random photos. Keri, hello and thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me here. It's fabulous.
Great. Now, I've got lots of questions, so
Cool.
we'll charge on in. Let's start with that big number of more than 48 novels. Do you remember, after so many sales, how it felt when you landed your first sale?
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. It was with Imagine, and it was the Dancing with the Devil, which was the 4th book I ever wrote. And it was just amazing. I sent it off to America, not expecting much, because it was a small press and at a time when e-publishing wasn't really a thing. And when they come back and you know, said yes, it was just, wow, I'm there. Of course, it wasn't quite there yet, but
It got there soon enough, hey?
Yep.
Alrighty. So one of the things we're asking everybody, of course, is how have you coped during COVID?
Well, it hasn't really changed for me because, you know, I sit at the computer every day writing, so I'm still sitting at the computer every day writing. The only thing that's really changed is I can't go meet my writing buddies or anything like that. I miss that. You know, just the face-to-face contact with other writers. I really miss that.
So have you started any new habits or got into any extra crafty things for your spare time?
No, I'm boring like that. I haven't even gotten into the cooking. I mean, I spent years and years as a chef. I think I've done more than enough cooking in my time. So,
Well, there's been a worldwide resurgence of baking your own bread, hasn't there?
I know, God help them.
So the first of our reader questions tonight comes from Louise Forster. And Louise asks, how have you found writing life since leaving traditional publishing and going indie? And did you get all of your titles back?
I will never get all my titles back. They paid too much money for them, and they're still earning money for them. So I've basically wiped off my traditional published novels as never getting them back. When I lost both my contracts, it was a huge learning curve to self-publish. And I actually wouldn't have managed without help from my mates, my writer mates who'd been there long before I ever got there. But yeah, huge learning curve, but thoroughly enjoying it now. I actually like having the control over the covers and everything like that. It's so much fun.
Mistress of your own universe.
Yeah, and something of a cover haul lately. I've bought so many covers I'll probably never have stories for, but, you know, they're pretty.
We can only hope.
Yep.
Okay, question 4, and this is one for me especially. You build such intricate worlds for your stories. Does it come more naturally now, or is it still a lot of work to build a new world?
It's always come naturally. I see the world in my mind as I'm writing. So I'm basically just writing what I'm seeing in my mind. And I've always written like that. I see scenes as whole scenes, as movie reels. And that's, you know, that's how I sort of write. I've always done that. So it hasn't really changed.
As an aside or a corollary to that, do you, when you're reading someone else's work, do you see it like a movie as well?
No, actually I don't, which is rather weird. I'm just enjoying the words and yeah, the writing when I'm reading someone else's work.
So did you always want to write in the sci-fi fantasy world, or did you start off in another subgenre?
I've always been fantasy. I started off writing fantasy early in the 1980s after reading so many fantasy novels where the heroine needed rescuing. You know, that really cheesed me off. So I started writing kick-ass heroines back then, but it wasn't until I started Dancing with the Devil that I pinpointed urban fantasy as what I wanted to write. Of course, it wasn't called urban fantasy then. It was still called fantasy by the traditional publishers. Yeah, but yeah, I've always written it.
So specifically, what attracts you to that type of writing or that type of storytelling?
The kick-ass heroines, but also the world, being able to mix the modern day world with fantasy elements. I have great fun doing that. It's just, you know, mixing vampires and werewolves and magic and witches, all in known situations. Like Melbourne, the Riley Jenson series was set in Melbourne. And I had great fun mixing real places with the imaginary. It was so much fun. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Our next reader question comes from Danielle Hilliard. Do you plan to revisit the Riley Jenson world?
No, sadly. My publisher actually wanted more Riley Jenson books, but by Moonsworn, the book 9, the last book, I didn't know where else to take her, and I didn't want to be one of those authors who just wrote the book for the sake of writing the series. I was quite happy with how Moonsworn ended, and I just thought, no, I can't do anything else. Besides, Riley deserved a happy ending in the end. I couldn't torture her anymore.
Fair enough. Now, let's get into the current series, the Witch's Crown series, which loosely follows Arthurian legend. Can I mention before I ask the question, I was up until 3:30 a.m. on Sunday morning because I could not put down Blackbird Rising. I just loved it. I'm already dying for the next one.
It's written. It's written.
So what made you take Arthurian legend into the urban fantasy world?
I've always wanted to do something based on the Arthur legend, but it never really crystallised until I actually saw the cover for Blackbird's Rising. It was a pre-made. And I just saw it and I thought, oh my God, that's the story. That's my story. So we've got the blackbirds, we've got witches, we've got magic, all set in a modern day setting. And I had a ball writing it.
So for those who aren't into the series just yet, can we talk about the series and your main characters? Because for me, it's a story with lots of threads and relationships. And how do you keep them all straight in your head?
I have 2 files open when I write. So I've got the story file, and then I've got world building and character. So basically, as soon as I write something, I just copy and paste into the relevant area. And that's how I keep things straight for the next book, or, you know, when I come back and edit, I can check what I've actually written somewhere else. So, yeah, so copy and paste is my friend.
Excellent. So the main 3 characters, because I see Mo as an integral part of the story at this point, at any rate, and she's magnificent for those who haven't read the series yet.
I had so much fun writing her. She was such a fun character to write.
Yeah, I can imagine. They're so well drawn and full of possibilities as the story builds throughout it. Are they based on anyone specific or any real or fantasy people that you might have come across over this?
No. All my characters are created in my head, and I just I don't plot. I'm not a plotter. I'm a pantser. So I'm basically just writing and having fun, and the characters and the world develops as I move along. So yeah, so it's good. Sorry, my dog's just come in for a pat.
Okay, most welcome. So for readers who are not there yet, do you want to give them the elevator pitch about this series and why they should be picking it up yesterday?
Oh, I hate elevator pitches. I'm so terrible at them. I don't know, actually. It's very intricate, so I don't know if I can put it down. If you asked me this about the Lizzie Grace series, I would have been able to do it, but
You can take longer than an elevator pitch. I was just...
It's a modern day retelling of The Sword and the Stone, featuring witches, magic, and demons, set in modern day England.
With a very, very sexy guardian.
Oh yeah, well yeah, he's basically the knight, one of the knights of the Round Table.
It took me a little while to get that bit, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's after Blackbird Rising? What's the next book and when is it out?
The next book is Deadly Vows, which is the book 6 of the Lizzie Grace series. And then in October, that comes out in June, which is next month. And then in October, I have book 2 of the Blackbird, the Witch King's Crown series, Blackbird Broken. So, yeah, so they're my next 2.
So is it October yet? Darn it. Our next reader question comes from Charlotte Ann. Charlotte Ann asks, as an independent author, how do you stay motivated and do you set your own deadlines?
I do set my own deadlines. I have 3 months to finish a book because I've already booked well in advance my editors and copy editors and proofers and everything like that. What was the other question? Sorry.
How do you stay motivated?
I have a big dog and a serious shoe and travel habit to support. So, so you've got to keep writing to support that because travel is expensive.
So what sort of travel are you looking forward to once, ISO's over?
Well, this year I had booked a tour to the Baltics and then from St. Petersburg up to through Russia. But, of course, that won't be going ahead now. But next year I've also booked a cruise around South Africa and then a 1-week tour around the animal parks. So fingers crossed for that one.
Yeah, that sounds fabulous. I've always wanted to go to South Africa.
Yeah.
So what was the first fantasy book you ever read? Do you remember? Back in the 80s?
Back in the 80s? Oh, God, I don't know. I mean, I can remember as a kid reading the Silver Brumpy series, and that's technically a fantasy series because horses talk in it. So that was probably my first introduction into the fantasy type genre. But I would have to say Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. I read that when I was about 12 or 13 and just absolutely fell in love with it. So that was probably my first introduction. And then I got into Mercedes Lackey and all those other authors.
Did you ever read the Thomas Covenant Chronicles?
Yes. Loved the first 6 books.
Yep.
Didn't love the rest.
I'm with you, exactly.
Yeah.
So do you have a favourite novel or a favourite character in a novel who still stands out for you amongst all of the others?
Mine or someone else's?
Doesn't matter.
If we're talking about mine, I suppose I have to say Riley, because it was her series that allowed me to become a full-time writer, and I'll be forever grateful for that. As for someone else's, Aragorn, Lord of the Rings. And of course the movie helped that a lot too, because
really, see, for me, because Viggo Mortensen's kind of short, but Strider was really tall. Well, yeah.
That's right.
Took me a little while to get used to him being short, because Strider's like 6'47".
Yes. I can cope, that's right.
Helm's Deep. Let's just open those doors.
Oh my Lord, yes. That is very good.
So you've written mostly series with some shorts in anthologies and a standalone. What draws you to writing series as opposed to standalones mostly?
The inability to let the characters or the world go. Basically, I mean, I put a lot of work into world building and getting the characters right and everything like that. And I just love continuing on with it. Plus, I love reading series myself, so that's just something I've always wanted to do.
Our last reader question comes from Malvina Yock. What do you read in your own downtime?
A lot of Regency romances. I absolutely adore Regency romance because it's just, for some reason, I can switch off the editor brain and just totally enjoy the story. It's just, yeah, I just love them. My other genre would be action adventure. Matthew Riley, Dick Francis. Love both of them. And a little bit of horror. I don't mind a little bit of horror, weirdly. I mean, James Herbert. Have you ever read any of James Herbert's? Oh, so good. The characters in them are so well drawn.
I'm writing it down.
Very, very good. Yeah.
All right. So, given that a lot of what happens in your head is show reels for your worlds, do you research? And if you do, how do you do it?
I researched, like for the Lizzie Grace series, I did a lot of research for the supernatural beings that I use in it, and base a lot of my stories off actual legends, but I twist them. For the Riley Jenson series, I had to investigate cloning and a lot of weapons and fight stuff, and just to be sure that I wasn't getting anything too wrong, that the readers could come back and say, no, that's not right. Yeah, so it's just a matter of Googling and going through all the different articles and picking out the bits and pieces that you can mention and stuff like that. Yeah, so a lot of fun. You can lose yourself down a rabbit hole doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they often lead off where you didn't expect them to go, but then you end up,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So, have you ever been approached by anyone wanting to option one of your books? And if so, can you tell us which one?
I've got someone interested in the Dark Angels series. It's been ongoing discussions for a while. Because the Dark Angels series is linked to the Riley Jenson series, it's a bit tricky. Because we've got to be a bit careful. I don't want them to have but yeah, it's just I'd want to lock down the Dark Angels series for them and then keep my options on the Riley Jenson series. So I don't know if it will ever happen. We're still in discussions. You know, it's just one of those things that's been going on for a while, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions. Would you like to collaborate on a book or series one day, or do you prefer being mistress of your own universe?
I prefer being mistress of my own universe. I don't share well with others when it comes to my characters, my world. Mine.
Is there, now that you're an indie self-published author, is there a book that you've been dying to write that you weren't allowed to with your trad publishers, and you've got it off on the side and you're still bubbling away with it?
No, basically. I've always written whatever books I want. My publishers have never given me guidelines or anything like that as to what I should write. I've just always written whatever I wanted and presented it to them, and they could take it or not. So that's basically what I've done all my career. All, 30 odd trad published books. So yeah, it's good. Yeah.
The proof's in the pudding. It was selling. Okay. Sometimes I ask people when I'm interviewing them, if you could have a dinner party, who would you like to invite?
Jane Austen, because I'd really like to know what it was like back then. Dick Francis, who's one of my favourite all-time authors. Don't know who else. I really don't. Someone pretty to look at.
All right. In our last couple of minutes together, I'd like to just turn to your hobby, your photography. What do you like to photograph, and did you ever consider becoming a professional photographer? I
would love to be a professional photographer. I just so enjoy it, but it's too hard work. It's almost as hard as writing, really, to become known as a professional photographer. And I love doing landscapes and trees and water, and not people so much. you know, landscapes. I just adore it. So anyone who follows me on my Facebook page will know how much I adore photography.
All right. Now, before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to share with our readers to give them an insight into your world or what you're working on or what you're doing? Or...
Well, what I'm doing at the moment is I'm writing the 7th book of the Riley Jenson. That would excite people. I'm writing the 7th book of the Lizzie Grace series at the moment and doing the edits on the Blackbird Broken series, the 2nd book of the Witch King series. So, and on the side, I'm writing a dragon book, which is a prequel for Burn, if anyone's read Burn, my fantasy dragon series book. So I'm writing a prequel for that, just for fun. So,
lovely.
Yeah.
All right. Can I get you to hold up that? This is a bit higher. That's it, ladies, and that's the number for the treasure hunt. Keri Arthur, 6686-4257. Thank you, Keri.
Cool.
Now, don't forget, readers, that you can connect with Keri at keriarthur.com, as well as on Facebook, Twitter, and Goodreads and Google+. Keri, thank you so much for joining us. I really loved meeting you again, and I know our readers will enjoy hearing from you.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I hope all our readers are going okay in the lockdown.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you. Night.